mornings.
Yeah. Small numbers.
I work about the wall.
Well, we'll call this meeting up later and we'll 22nd. We'll start off with reports from committees, audit and finance, and exactly what's people. We had the last meeting, so we'll rely on Jim to help us update the board on your audit finance matters.
No, I think there's not very much. The books are closed. The fund balance is 1.061, which is just a little over 500 off than last year.
I think that's an important thing because we put a 3-year plan to spend into the fund balance, and then looking to sustain. And so even though there were some variability in the budget, we were able to manage the coming course of the
The T-bills look good. We are no longer rolling into new T-bills. The interest rate is just better in money market fund. All the receivables are contract payments. We're due quite a bit from the county, and I had a conversation with them that payment is forthcoming. I actually expecting it this week. So on the budget, we're under budget by 85,000. But 50 of that was the discrepancy, the shortfall in the municipal allocation. 15 of that is a shortfall on our sponsorship, which we have a marketing person now, so I think that'll be better next year. And 19 was for ARPA. So the ARPA funds had to be committed by the end of this year. But it was okay that if they were committed for a project in 2025, as long as we could report what the project was at the end of 2024. So if you roll that 19,000 into 2025 for the project that we have that corresponds to the housing. So on the expenses, the 85,000 kind of gets netted out by personnel. We had budgeted for a full-time person, and so that kind of nets out that shortfall. Marketing was over by 9,000. That was part of the contractor, and the website. That was an unforeseen change. The company switched hands, and then we had to pay extra to kind of update our updated system to meet their system requirements. But otherwise, I think we did pretty good at keeping things tight on the expenses side. The audit is underway. They're going to be on site in February, but I've already started transferring documents over to them.
Able to work yet, but we'll move back to governance committee. Right. We met at the governance committee on January 15th on all governance conduct. And we talked again, I think we talked in our last meeting there about establishing separate committee. And so we talked about group and we want to put it forth for approval during this meeting. Because we'll just have a spot for things that will fall in governance on it, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be monthly or quarterly as they come up. And for that, I think that was a good step. And then we also talked about putting for now in title and then secondly, I asked all of the planning if he would join us on the governance committee, and he said, yeah. So the chairs around a little bit, we're all good things. We also reviewed, some policies that Tricia was kind of put together, in particular the New York State Sexual Harassment Prevention, policy that they had reviewed by outside counsel, which is, HR consultant, with Tyler HR. And, we'll have it updated and collected in the spread. And then we also reviewed the, marketing campaign and where we are, and I think last time we were here, Trish had asked us to just look at if there's anyone's in that list, if they haven't, donated, if we could, identify ones to help with, and if we haven't done that, please, take some time to look at the list. That'd be great, now.
Not sure. We don't,
The information about membership is in the folder, so. Take a look. This is everyone has either committed or so I think last month you gave us a list of everyone, so we're going to go back.
we give.
Like they were gonna take any, okay, again, we did, kind of send it out. Actually.
Want to find an update.
Just finish sending thank yous to those who have, not pledged, but have anything. And I continue to reach out to them for renewal membership. And a smaller group that I will be reaching out to. Actually, so I will be reaching out. And I will also send it out.
Yeah.
They talked about this, giving us the board members an updated kind of talking point sheet for us that we're going to call people that we want to talk about. Some key points that we want to share. Before we set out the list that, so we just had our update on membership, so we'll be right into business activity.
Well, there's a business activity flash on this week, for some reason, it's quickly. We had the first of a series of events as we focus on expanding the entrepreneurial ecosystem this past week in Virginia around that we combined it with the Startup 80K graduation. We can talk more about how better that, but we had healthy attendance, not as good attendance as I was hoping for. I think the holidays and also just the fact that this is the first that we're trying to engage this community probably had something to do with that. In the week leading up to the event, I received more than 20 notices from people who knew about the event that said they did not come to the research. Clearly, Wednesday is not a good day for that. Most of them had conflicts that were standing. So we'll take that under as we go forward. But the focus of this was to really start to build the sense of a community here in this area that is supportive of idea generation, leading to both startups and in many cases, helping bring visibility to commercial activity that's already underway, but we don't necessarily see. John has been tracking this, and in fact, we're going to go through this in a little more detail during this section. Because this month, I really wanted us to focus as an industry segment on the current data around this part of the economy. But, at that meeting, we laid out an agenda for the rest of the year, loose, that we would have 3 to 4 more events, and we were really looking for feedback from the community themselves as to what kind of things would be valuable. And we're also going to engage with different communities in an intentional way to try to gather that feedback before we schedule whatever we do next. Yesterday, I met with your sister and she was at the event, and she came because she wanted to talk further about some of these ideas. She had excellent input about the kind of things that would be potentially valuable to people who are either in the midst of starting a venture or have started one, but the kind of challenges they face after they're on the way. Exactly the kind of feedback that we were after. So for instance, she suggested that when somebody forms an LLC, they oftentimes do that under advisement, but they don't necessarily know all of the appropriate things. They can follow through that, both what they should or what they shouldn't. And so they're afraid to move expenses through it. They don't really see the full benefit of it. And sometimes it's the tax issue, and sometimes it's just what is customary and acceptable. When you've never operated that way, it can be alien. I never really thought about it. She said, if you have a workshop that helps people understand what are the right ways to lean into that kind of structure, and she said, I think 50 of my friends would show up. So that's the kind of info we're looking for. She also suggested that there are tool sets in the software world, because they're so quickly evolving, that people are scared to make investments on because they're not sure they're picking the right one. And sometimes these are very big investments for small firms. And so she thought maybe that there was interest just in whether you look at it from an AI standpoint or you look at it from a project management standpoint or some of the other sectors of the software world, just simply bringing awareness to what some of the best in class products are, what some of the experiences are, would be valuable. And she felt like that would be an ongoing component of the community. The point is that I think this was exactly the dialogue that we were hoping to start. And we have several other entities that were either there or were invited that we're going to engage. I think we will have an event in the next 2 months that will be a follow-on that will start to build on this momentum. And then we'll have a series of them, but all of this will be informed by the input that we're getting. We're trying to build. The net objective of this is to put ourselves on the map, not only for people who are here, but maybe people who are not here, but would think of this place as some place where you could operate as an individual business, operate as somebody who's working remotely, or operate where you could essentially create an idea. And I think one of the things that's the biggest opportunity for this is the reverse marketplace, which we are now working in earnest to start to launch in the fall. We have the ideas and the business plans drafted. We have to go through a second iteration of that. But 5 of these ideas will essentially be convened with groups that are interested in them in a series of sessions where we'll go through each business plan. We'll be looking to identify either existing organizations or residents or even potentially people who are not here that would be interested in taking these ideas and commercializing them. In conjunction with the EDC, which would then act as a source of startup capital. And we're looking for other places that we can stack and lever. We spoke with the LTA yesterday, with the executive director. 3 of the ideas are based around critical issues that they're also working. So we've opened the dialogue with them about whether or not they would want to be a partner in this. And so there's for them.
Just want to also kudos to Emily for some great Mentimeter moments, engagement with the audience. And I think another way to collect data on what people are thinking about when it's in space, and so good job on that. Thank you.
Identity is also a big part of what we were asking people for. How do you see yourself and how do you see your, I will be consistent. Because they inform a lot of what we and it was interesting in real time to see some of the feedback that for instance, it might be critical for some, but not a single person yet, anytime they're going to ask, has identified where they live at the point. They identify themselves by geographic features, Sometimes they identify themselves by the communities within Warren County. But Warren County is not a way that people see as an identifier. And I think we have to decide what does that mean for us. But we're just going to continue to ask people because I think their input is helpful. We're going to, actually, I'd love to talk to you for just a second after. But we're spending a disproportionate amount of time in trying to assist in the advancement of the wastewater system. Probably going to even ramp up further from some of the discussions that occurred yesterday. The reason I tell you this is well beyond where we have normally been in terms of advocating for infrastructure that would deliver business value. But I don't know that it is, I think it may be this way going forward, but the communities we serve, even in the case of Glens Falls and Queenston, oftentimes do not have the resources they need to really fully manage some of these bigger projects just through the funding and advocacy. And it's too important for some of these investments to not be successful for the economy of the place. It's a little bit like broadband in that I never imagined that we would be as deep as we are. But I believe that if leadership is required and we're asked, we will always step in and try to help fill that gap. And that's definitely happening here. Goal here is to make sure that Florida's enormous, the state's enormous investment in Skibo project is built with a wastewater system that can serve it and also the community at large. There is no downside, but it is a challenging process to get us across the finish. We're working on all of our documents. We've had them reviewed with our attorney. We're in some cases going back for a second iteration, particularly the town of Queensbury's contract, which came to us with new language that we had never seen, multi-year contract, for instance. That's requiring some back and forth. I expect that in next month's meeting, we'll be able to present those through the committee structure and all to a full board, and you'll be able to decide how you'd like to proceed from there. In the meantime, we continue to work in good faith with all the organizations. I don't anticipate really any challenge anywhere. It's simply a matter of strategy here. Queensbury has fully funded their allocation for this budget year for the EDC, and we continue to operate in the scope that we have always operated. So this is really about how we see our relationship over the longer haul and with the contract, how that's related to it. In the case of the city, we continue to operate it as we always have. So I don't really just think this is a matter of just getting us aligned to get the contract signed. I think the same with the county. We are taking the scope and trying to unify it as much as possible so it's consistent across those, and then adding those things that are unique for each entity, but having some core set that would be consistent no matter where it is getting referred. So all of that's I think the business activity and the industry focus are all one. So we're going to monitor that.
All right. I handed a few things out, and certainly I can go through the thing on here, right? The first thing I handed out was to get the these done by 20 weeks together. Research and a lot of information, and there are a lot of data. There's a couple of items on the statistics. I'm sorry it's so small that it's hard to read it, but there's some that pop out. These are somewhat, these are yearly data points and different things that are on here. Some of them are new to what they were reporting. A couple of them jumped out. One is not surprising. The building permit activity is lower. I mean, it's a combination of the economy and the rates. But also it's just interesting to note. Also, the adults with associate's degrees and adults with BA or higher is quite a chunk there in 2023. It's probably a combination of things, but interesting to know that uptick is there. Oh, it's to the part of college here, but
We'll take full credit.
but it also matches up a lot of interesting part of this. This stuff tells with the Jim's conversation about very old people. The non-employer establishments is a figure you've been watching. We create the, number they're continuing going, also the new ones. So employer establishment first, this is 2022. It was 170 that year, of which that, if you go down and how your job creation from employer establishment first. Well, that's, I guess, the number of employees that are resulted out of that subgroup. And that was in 2022, that was 795, which is a 4% jump, which is kind of interesting. It's like think about 100-person firms that could be there, could be such a big news item. This was sort of on the radar screen, and so granular. You know how many people they are. Really got to delve into that number a little bit more in terms of what jobs they create, and maybe what level of compensation. But the good news is our gross regional product is going up. That's a healthy rate too compared to some of the other parts of the state. 12%. That's really good. So I just call it out. It's on the match up with some of the stuff.
Real quick, John, one of the things that can be vexing when we look through this is that the data sources are not uniform. So some are chosen from the NSA, which includes Washington County. Some are chosen from data sets that are aggregated, for instance, by the Department of Labor or by Liza's organization, and they work across the 3-county area. And so we try to identify the source of that data anywhere we can. You'll see in parentheses sometimes where it says where it's coming from, like on the boxes here with the colors. You can look over to the side and tell you whether that is NSA data or Warren County specific data right along the side. That makes it a little challenging to draw conclusions across some of these data sets, but it's still insightful. And I think the other thing that it speaks to us about is that many of these economic factors are not really well subdivided by county. We move as a region, particularly in some of these macro areas. Our workforce, for instance, is fluid across those boundaries. Certainly, we want to know what the differences is in tax base or, for instance, median income or median age. But in cases, if you're an employer, you're really not that focused on whether or not somebody goes across the line in Washington County. And so I think increasingly we need to remember that as an organization. I understand that we are primarily funded by Warren County, and we will always be driven to optimize and focus on Warren County issues from the inside out. But we also essentially act as the focal point for the economic activity of at least those 3 counties, and I think increasingly beyond that. So this data, we have as many questions as you do. It lags by 3 to 6 months. So oftentimes I don't generally like to lead with it, because unless it's very specific to a strategy, this is more insightful for us than it is indicator of our unique success. But I think it is an independent point. And all of our work around entrepreneurism, for instance, was sparked by some of the things that we were seeing from these numbers that we had not really dug into before. If there are specific areas that you find of interest, either from your organization's perspective or just in general, we are always happy to do this. And at the county, we do occasionally pull out things and talk specifically to them about the implications to the county. But as you look at this, if there's more you want to talk about, let us know. Leave it within this forum. We can come where we do.
There are some charts farther into this that here speak more to the entrepreneurial side and the data doesn't mark out. All that just for a second. These first 2 charts are our standard typical activity charts we send out. We're starting the year where we left off. There was a lot of activity over the holidays, but there was some wash basically. There was one new business activity, business expansion, business opportunity came our way without the regional power down company coming in the Warren County. Go through some processes of permitting and also other things. Parts of the county that they want to expand. It's most falls weaker and the markets. So that'll be announced pretty soon by them. That they haven't announced it themselves yet, but that will be in there.
The one dropped out when it came in.
We had nothing. Yeah, but what happens? I called out one that was just consistent suspension. So one activity with expansion activity. was not going to go forward, so I didn't want to carry it along anymore, so I just try to periodically move the list and make sure we're not carrying forward the ones that are still ahead. They're not decided to go forward. Likewise, on the new development opportunity, there's an alternate energy entity that's coming to and ask us for help in locating the county, and have specific targets, specific technologies. Again, not like what they do. We saw some publicly, but it is an opportunity for us to cite someone.
One of those we've already engaged the city on, because there's a potential for the town to be, and some of their land holdings to be involved in this additions during, and then one would have to do with Queensberry Park. And we're evaluating a proposal now that if we feel like is worthy, we would advance for a decision about whether we would want to be on biggest chunk of Queensberry Park across the airport. This particular organization, very, very efficient in terms of what they do. The space, they would lease roughly 10,000 square feet, which is smaller than an industrial lot. And we oftentimes look for lots that would be challenging to take the full utility out of, say, a typical sale to see whether or not we could advance this idea with one of these sliver or difficult lots. That's what we're doing now. And if there's opportunity there, and if we think both the company and the proposal merit it, we can bring it forward for your review, probably not.
A couple of charts in here. December, January meeting, so it's either cut it I can see. Other generally limited to North Korea and other events and start the small person ideas one. It's also this other activities we have questions about. It's feel free to ask. We kind of considerable amount of time, especially during some of these forums. This chart here for the Warren County New Business Formation chart. This is the stuff that which was gathered by CBG by asking us to focus it on Warren County as opposed to the region or the MSA. So the good news is that we're doing better in both categories, both as far as year to date. You know, we have through the third quarter, we don't have the fourth quarter. Yeah. But New York State business appropriations are on pace to be largest. We're running a little bit behind last year's. We were 440 last year and all 412. But still a pretty healthy amount for you're going to end up in that 500 to 600 range this year. And depending on how it finishes out the year.
You'll see it in a subsequent chart. Prior to COVID, this number had hovered around 200 to 200. Annually.
This next chart kind of rapidly represents that. So you can see kind of where we are in the days on 2024, which we're going to be ahead of pre-COVID for sure. We'll be more than that with post-COVID part of the population.
Well, so I'd like to, this is our industry focus for this particular month. Mostly what I wanted to do was time it with the fact that we had started these series on that so you can understand some of the activities and how they're going. We have a lot more work to do to really understand what are these businesses, what do they represent. We've started to get insight to individuals as they share it with us, but we probably still only have insight to single-digit percentage of the total amount. And so it's hard to discern exactly what to do yet, because I don't think we have enough information about who we're talking about. But in order to do that, on this last chart, we talk about what are the specific things that we are laying out to do over the course of the year. The first is to continue to build and support and hopefully evolve the existing Star Education. We do it well. And I think the actual conduct of the course is as good as it's ever been, but I think there are still opportunities for us to continue to expand it. And Bob is a spectacular resource. I think we can do better. You probably recognize it after the fact. And one thing I want to mention to you, particularly Dr. W, is that we had intended to take every single business that had finalized and meet with them individually. Mostly so that we can offer support to them, and figure out what might be resources that we can help them connect to or apply. But also to learn from them and add them into our active database of some of these smaller enterprises. That was always the case, even before we had inquiries from the event the other day. The other thing we would probably do is work with Emily to feather in individual features about these businesses throughout the course of early 2025. I think we can do a better job of helping people understand some of these things that are developing right in front of us. Now, building a community is a much more amorphous thing. You know, how do you actually measure that? You can measure how many people you're engaging with, if you will, if you do that. You can measure how many people continue to come, but are they repeat people or are they not? But ultimately, the goal here is for us to have this as part of our identity. A lot of that is tying this to our history. So the paper that we produced last year, the study about the history of our economy, is a really important part of that. Because our heritage here is one where ideas have born large things that people are very familiar with historically. This is not a new idea that we're attempting to advance. This is the next chapter of something we have always done. And I think that's also important because you need people to realize that while the industries and the sectors may change, the culture and the legacy is the same. And we have an advantage here if we lean into it. That's more of a marketing thing. So we produced a video that was associated with this event that we would use as an example of that. But I think we're going to be looking to do more and more on social media, more and more media engagement about this, and you'll continue to hear this consistent tie back to the idea that we have rich history in this, and now we're trying to figure out how to take that history and turn it into today's version of it. Startup 2.0 is this notion we've been talking about not only with the existing startup community, like Startup ABK, but also with business ventures themselves. What is it? Like this idea about an LLC, for instance, is an example of something that might either be a standalone piece of information that we try to provide, or it might be part of some kind of curriculum or program. Still don't have all that structured, but we're working on that, and primarily with Bob, but I think with the larger community. We want to try to talk to anybody who's working, like the SBA, like the banks, with people who are on the startup side to see what are the recurring needs they see. And we would this year like to develop at least a pilot offering to advance this. And then finally, this reverse marketplace is what we got to launch later this year. So these are the elements of our focus on trying to not just drive numbers, but drive optimal economic activity out of this sector. Better understand it, listen to it, and then support it. John also gave you just a schedule. It's a loose schedule, but essentially this gives you some view towards the topics we'd like to cover this year. So right now, it's our intention to kind of go in the order that you see here. So next month, we would like to go deeper on healthcare, and soon we'd like the opportunity to come over and talk to some people over at Hudson Headwaters, and Jim was here at asking the same. We'll probably look for a dedicated meeting with you to prepare for that. I think it also kind of times nicely with the fact that we'd like to engage with your management team in that same time frame. But what we're really trying to do is both learn what is the current situation in that particular sector, what is our role in trying to help, and also what are the things that maybe we don't know that we need to know because we just haven't connected with you in a year. Tourism would be next, if you could see the list. If you see something, or if you see that there is something that isn't here, this is our brainstorming about what we see as the primary sectors that would be worth going deep on. If somehow we've either missed the mark or there's something that you want to include, we still have the opportunity to modify this. This is ours to do what we want.
Under professional, is that education? That's the only thing that's the only bias, but.
Yeah, that was kind of everything else, and then we tried to put a name on it. That whole thing is really a sector of our economy, which we refer to as the service sector, but we didn't actually put municipalities themselves or school districts themselves. So this is what we would consider to be more of the commercial end of that. I don't mind going on education alone, we're appropriate. We can talk about what would be the best. And
we can alter this order as well, like it might make sense for us to bring this forward. Doing work. Put something else in that situation. Well. First. Okay. I think that's, well, there's two other things I want to mention to you. We are having a staff event in February, a staff building event. We engaged Integrity HR, which is our outside HR service arm. Sue helped us connect with and provides us with general HR support. They're coming to do personality profiles using the risk analysis tool, but it's really about us as a team getting better understand each other and trying to make sure that we're working effectively together. There may be more of this. I did not budget for this, so we will figure out exactly where to put this, but I do think it's an important thing. We haven't done much in the way of professional development here. I think it is at least one element of that. I think also there are in February, we are not speaking at the New York State Economic Development. We call it conference. It's essentially where everybody that sits in roles like ours comes and listens to the governor and talk about economic development for the coming year. Generally try to avoid it for the last several years. However, Drew Fitzgerald, our favorite son here from this area, has been asked by the state to give a presentation there. They have become aware of both his vector of coming back and the fact that they'd like to capture some of that energy about the fact that there are some people who are coming back to New York to advance business as opposed to leaving them. I think that's noble. We're going to do our very best to help shape that message. Never 100% in control of the message when somebody else is giving it. But it is notable because they asked, they did not, the only thing they asked for me was how to cancel. So I didn't know when they asked for his contact information, what they were asking for. I think this is good. We're on top of it, trying to make sure that it delivers the most value. If at the end of that, some of the themes that we are already working emerge as things that he can help nudge the state towards, for instance, committing money to the idea of resource protection, natural resource protection being a true economic development channel, really identifying it as a sector, putting money into it, that would really be a boom. And if his notion of saying, right now, you are missing the people like me, like I wouldn't know where to go to get help from you. It's vexing, and I'm not a chip fab. We got to figure that part out. That would also be helpful to us. The state themselves has some challenges that they have to share. Anything that wasn't permitted as a wind project was killed yesterday. And I think a big chunk of where they have focused some of their resources has been around expanding the wind energy sector. Meanwhile, on the chip side, much of what has been in development has been formalized over the last 60 days. So the monies that were associated with developing a second node for the existing chip fab and for the research facility associated with assuming nanofab, all of those things have been finalized. So those things have potential to impact us. We have to better understand it. So we'll be at that conference. That's everything for us.
Call, a national call with the fire disasters, how we help them. This is something the Red Cross, and one statistic that stuck with me. It's like 1 in 10 people in California are undocumented. 1 in 10% of that population. And thinking about here and how many migrants we have working on farms and different things and what impact the change in administration will have on these folks potentially leaving because they're probably doing that. They're probably keeping grounds up and housing or whatever they probably were doing things. It's just wondering what that is going to mean on farmers up here or people that rely on smokes. So I think it's a real thing that's on the development. Geez, I'm wondering if people will admit if they have undocumented workers. I mean, that's part of the problem. Because there is some level of
Red Cross because, we don't ask for any, so when we set up shelters, anybody can come, so we get that message out and we see them in those communities in California. But like seeing the other ones are going past. So to your point, even if you're not in the place, doesn't have much, so care, okay. But there are, to your point,
It's already happened because, part of this Adirondack Welcome Circle, we've been working with, a federal organization that's bringing folks to this community and others, who are legally able to come. And that we just got notification yesterday that all those, we were supposed to get someone from Afghanistan back in 2 weeks. And as of yesterday, it was any travel for any of those programs. So I mean, it's already happening very quickly, even for anyone that was approved through a regulated system has already been cut off.
so understanding. Because of that.
Well, I mean, my speculation here is that you will see it in the growth of our gap between jobs and workforce. They're generally not recognized in the workforce figures unless they're carrying a registered immigration status. So there was always some portion of that that was underreported on the supply side. But since many of the jobs at the lower end of our scale may be being filled this way, you'll see those jobs enter in and that gap will grow. That just makes our existing problem bigger. And I think highlights our need to try to figure out how are we creating the opportunity for us to build the workforce we need to just be able to function. 2/3 of our economy is going, as we covered, is largely automation resilient. In other words, these are not jobs that are going to be automated out. And therefore, that's a bigger challenge than, say, a manufacturing centric place where there is an option, even if it requires capital investment, to continue to operate. So we don't know the answers, but we're definitely in the problem. We have.
Well, helping people to get some would be one step too. You know, there are organizations I think that do that. I don't think there are any here. But helping people to get through that complicated process of getting settled, and getting the documents.
Yeah, there are, that's what Adirondack Welcome Circle does, that's what, there's an organization circle that does that. Trying to work through the channels that exist, but again, those are already.
Getting them a little bit more known, people, get their information.
All right, so, we have, as, Sue reported, we have two recommendations for the board. One is to, the executive committee and the other is for the governance committee. And so we have those as part of our package of approval, so we're the motion to approve all of the resolutions, the financials, December 18th meeting minutes, as well as the two appointments. So move. Second. Thank you to both. Welcome to new committees. One favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose, abstain. Anything else for this body? All right, motion to adjourn. We'll see you next month.
We made it.
Yeah.